Welcome everybody to HUAA Nation, Howard University. We are doing this extraordinary interview in partnership with the DuSable Museum of African American History, which is located in Chicago. It's the oldest African American museum in the country and is also a Smithsonian affiliate. My name is Sean N. Murray, and I'm the founder of Attain 9 Global and the creator of Chicago 1919. And the DuSable Museum is the historical consultant on that film. And today we are here with great honor and pleasure to, I want to say announce, but I know it's already been announced, but I'm just going to take a little bit of that to announce and talk about and encourage everyone to go see Nate Parker's new film, American Skin. We have with us Keith David, who is a three-time Emmy Award winner, Tony nominee, recently in Greenleaf, I'm sorry, and a Juilliard trained actor. We have Dr. Haney, who is the Director of Education at the Double Museum. And we have Dr. Greg Carr, who is a profoundly well-known professor at Howard University and who is one of the foremost leaders in African American studies. And so what we want to do here is actually go into, and Nate, I'll let you lead this, go into a little bit of kind of the historical backdrop to American Skin and how you use that in your development of the film and what you were trying to bring home from a historical perspective right now.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. There's no better place to be than a student than in the presence of educators that look like me, that have dedicated their life's work to moving us forward. So I'm in honor and awe of you guys. And, my small contribution is just a small contribution in the face of the work you all do every single day. So I appreciate you and honor you for that. As for the film, one, thank you for engaging and watching it. So often we talk about the fractured relationship between our people and law enforcement, but we do so in a vacuum. We don't have a historical context. Most people don't know the conditions through which law enforcement were developed, and they don't know when our bodies started being policed by these members of society. They also don't know the socioeconomic status of the very first police officers. All of these things, I believe, contribute to the brokenness that is affecting us now, the trauma and generational trauma that we've inherited and that we're fighting through. So in Making American Skin, and in some ways, The Birth of a Nation, if you remember the scene where we had the patty rollers on the street, I really wanted to introduce this idea of patrolling the block. That is not a new thing to have these police officers riding around the plantation, making sure people who look like us don't leave, making sure property is contained on a landmass. So obviously, I transitioned that into this conversation around American Skin to really get into the psyche around what it means to be a citizen growing up in this type of duress, where you have to speak to your children about survival in a way that traumatizes them as the words are coming out of your mouth. I spoke to you, Sean, and Keith, about how my nephew, I got custody of him when he was in the 8th grade and put him in a very, affluent school, and only to realize I'd taken him out of the frying pan and put him into the fire. Because when Michael Brown got killed, he came to ask me, well, what do I do if I get pulled over on my bike? How do I respond to the police? And my answer was so unsatisfactory that I felt embarrassed. I said, oh, well, make sure you call me because I can show up. Wait, don't call me. Don't grab your phone. Well, just put your hands up, slow down, make eye contact so they can see your humanity, see your baby face as an 8th grader, and see that even though you're 6 feet tall and dark skinned, that you can smile, that you're not a threat, no sudden moves. And it just realized that I was further traumatizing him. And it made me think about Dr. Joy DeGraw's book when she talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome and how on the plantation, specifically Black women more often than not had to prepare their daughters and their sons for the type of dehumanizing process that they would have to go on the plantation. You know, they'd have to tell their daughters or something, oh, she's shiftless, she's dumb, she don't know nothing, she's, so she wouldn't be attractive to the overseer or the master, these type. And I think that there's a connection. And here I am all these years later telling my nephew that these people who I pay taxes for them to exist and feed their families, how to dehumanize yourself so they don't see you as anything more aggressive than what you are. Do I still have you guys? So it's under that pretext that I started to write this film. I interviewed countless law officers, and it's interesting because nearly every officer said, I will speak with you in truth under the condition of anonymity. Not one said, use my name, because I stand by my tactics. I stand by
not funny, it's horrible.
Not one. They were like, look, you're not gonna say my name? Okay,
right.
what's your question?
Right.
And so the dialogue that you find in this film is from the mouth of some person that we've hired to protect us. It's just real. I didn't make up, it was all of these things, and I dramatized, put them together so it made sense in the narrative. But everything you hear are the words of men and women from all culture, all color backgrounds in the system of policing, saying this, what do you mean? Of course we all profile, of course.
Yeah, and you did that so well. I thought that, in fact, Keith and I were talking about that this morning, the way each character had their own identity as it related to what policing was and what being policed was. And some in surprising ways. You made it different for the woman, you made it different for the Hispanic guy. Each person was an individual representation. And I think that probably came through because of all these interviews that you did. And Dr. Carr, I know you saw the film. What were your thoughts about that?
Thank you for the invitation, first of all, to be in this conversation. And, Brother David, I can't count the days I've had you on in the background, your voice in my ear with you narrating documentaries. I can quote them verbatim, particularly jazz. Charlie Parker, set his bed ablaze. I'm like, man, it makes sense. I thank you for your life and career of work. But, but Brother Parker, as someone who had on my dissertation committee a very important Chicagoan, Jacob Carruthers, who was a student of James Farmer Sr., I think about the work that you even did in the Great Debaters, brother, and then what you've done for Wiley College and Forth, and then, of course, Birth of a Nation. That is a text that we teach. We show that film, the companion volume that you created, and all the literature around what happened in Southampton County. The books still continue to come out, so thank you for that. This film, I thought, was a brief. In a legal sense, I think. And, the best lawyers anticipate the arguments people will make against them and fold them into the arguments they make. And in frame after frame, every moment that came to mind, the initial encounter, the sources of inspiration, the way that the techniques for trying to de-escalate, the questions of gender, the ineffective counsel, all these things, all the arguments, you could see how you had workshopped this language, workshopped this, and taken away everything except the human experience. And I think it was that critique of institutions. Education, because I was in that first generation that was bust. So the whole question of, us being in the prisons, entertainment, the question of the supply metaphor. I mean, what happens when you come from a continent where literally it was about world trade, and the thing they wanted from Africa was human beings, as John Henry Clark used to say, and there was no exchange value. And from there all the way through cultural appropriation, every line, every scene in this film felt like a person working in a craft along the same arc of an August Wilson, someone who had an initial draft and then workshopped it and then workshopped it and then workshopped it and captured it. So I'll end with these initial comments by saying that, not only encouraging everyone to watch this film, but to watch understanding that what will be laid bare is our common humanity.
That's right.
And don't go in expecting answers, because frankly, we make the road by walking it, as Paulo Freire said. And without giving away any spoilers, I will ask a question that I hope we may get around to answering in the few minutes we have today. One, I hope that there is a director's cut, because I'm looking at the many possible ways this film could unfold. And I'm sure you shot a dozen or more of them, brother. And then the other one is, there's a line in there, you say, you know, this system affects us all, but we are just sit in the worst position to do anything about it.
Yes.
That speaks to the thing. When you come out of a film like this, you want to do something, and understand the individuals don't beat institutions. It has to be done collectively. So I want to thank you
Yes,
for this work.
Yes.
yes.
Wow.
Thank you for that. Dr. Delaney,
Yeah.
our other expert here. Well, I know you saw it, I believe, last night, and I would love to hear your thoughts and anything related to your historical interpretation of the film as well.
Yeah, I sent you an email after that. I said, wow. Yes,
Yeah.
it was very moving. In fact, today I was on a call earlier with an organization that's doing work with the police force, Chicago Police Department, right? And they asked me to participate in training the police on community. And then on this call, they were saying they want to have a more positive image. And I was thinking, wow, they need to see that film, right? Everybody, I was
Yes.
thinking the way God
Yes.
works. Here's a film for you, bro. I'm going to send y'all this film. You see this film. Because it's amazing that I saw that film last night. Then a good friend of mine, a former colleague, I'm an African American studies professor as well. And so one of my former colleagues had asked me to participate in the police thing. Then here at DuSable on Monday, we're having a deliberation where we're trying to come up with action items for the new presidential administration, right? For this Black Agenda Points. So it all ties in. So last night, that film made me very emotional. Since Greg quoted the line, I was thinking, quote the line, I don't know. But I wrote down some lines, to hit Greg with later. But the line for me for the movie, and it's gonna make me cry to say it. I'm trying to get myself together before I say it. And I'm not gonna say who said it, but I ain't shit.
Mm,
My God. What?
mm.
That moment, I was just like, oh my God, there's no better way to capture that feeling. There's no better way to capture the feeling, even when we're watching things on television, right? I don't care what you tell yourself, that's at the bottom of it.
That's right.
When you watch legal lynchings, right?
Yeah.
Modern day legal lynchings, that's at the bottom of it. When I have to tell my son not to go to a party and he's 30 years old, tell my daughter, oh, you're going there, all the things I did, you know what I'm saying? That's at the bottom of that. There's nothing else that captures that I've ever seen in a film other than that one line.
It was just phenomenal. That was, and it's that moment in particular is phenomenal. But you said something interesting about being addressed to what do we do to change the image? Now, to me, that's telling, because you got to change a man's thinking. It's not about what you look like. It's about how you are.
Wow.
How are you going to change? How are you going to change your way of being? Not just what you look like, despite what you look like.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's where the changes got to come. We have to not only look at ourselves differently, we have to look at humanity differently.
Yes.
Just like every white man is not the enemy, and sometimes he doesn't know he's not the enemy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can hold him accountable and responsible for what he doesn't know, but I cannot blame him for what he doesn't know.
Right.
The thing that stood out to me the most about the film was the subject of accountability.
Yes.
How and when are we going to hold the police force accountable for what they do? Listen, people make mistakes. If this guy is not the only person who was afraid they're going to be drawn on, so they shoot first. It happens, when they talked about black on black crime, it's because somebody felt threatened. I'm going to shoot first.
Right.
But when are you going to? When do we take the pause as patriots, as a people, just as another human being, before you let your temper and your temperament escalate, before you go from 0 to 60 like this, right
Yeah.
now, when do you pause and say,
Pause.
whoa, wait a minute?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And just because somebody said something that you didn't like doesn't mean your life is threatened
Right.
because your ego was hurt.
Mhm.
And when do we learn that, I'm not my ego, and just because my ego gets insulted by something, I don't have to act upon that.
And I'm glad you pointed that out. That's the in our deliberation on Monday, we're going to talk about police accountability, because if you know that there's none, then I'm pretty sure you'll be quicker to respond. If your friend went to jail for murdering somebody,
Yes.
I bet you'll slow down. Or guess what else? Or you'll try to work through that fear. If you're afraid of black skin, then you need to go get some courage classes or get another assignment, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If you
absolutely.
think you're gonna go to jail for it, I bet you try to go get some and try to know the people more so you won't fear that skin.
Right, right. And Dr. Delaney, Chicago, people see Chicago as this seat of violence, which we know is inaccurate. And, I spoke recently, actually, Perry mentioned to me that the great nephew of your Mayor Daley wrote an article recently where he talked about the Daley family being a family of white supremacists. And I had then the opportunity to speak with him, and he's going to be part of a commission that I'm working on actually with you guys, where we're going to, I said, you can be a part of now making the change rather than just talking about the change. And this commission is going to reflect a lot of the things that we were studying back literally 101 years ago in 1919. So I do think, and this leads me to a question I had spoken to Keith about this, Nate. I really know that a wide variety of people need to see this film demographically. And how do we get the people who need to see this film, and we need to see it too, but how do we get everybody who needs to see this film to see this film?
The answer, a pandemic.
Mm.
There's no pressure for box office. There can be no divisive tactics or gaslighting when it comes to our narrative, because everyone's home.
Yeah,
So
good.
This
Yeah.
is what's gonna happen. This is how I God's timing is so perfect.
Mm.
I can only imagine a cop seeing this film, whatever color, calling another cop saying, "Did you see American Skin?"
Right. Yes.
I'm not watching that SISH. I get that, but nobody's around. Send your family to the park. Just press play and just go to the middle.
Yes.
Play for 15 minutes and call me back.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We've never
yes.
been in this situation before.
Yeah.
God is the great architect. Because look, and my brother Keith will tell you, you'll make a film that is designed to be a lightning rod to the spirit of your people and the ones who oppress them. And all of a sudden, like, the box office, it's a flop. And everyone's like, oh, it's a flop.
Right, exactly. Right. You can't do that now because nobody has anything else to do.
Exit stage right. No one watches the film. And then you ask them years later, did you see that film? It was a flop, right?
Right.
And look, it only happens to us in this way. How many times, Brother Keith, have you been a part of a project where it was hijacked by the very people, the very gatekeepers, dare I say, and I'm going to mince my words. God knows I don't want to be in trouble. But it gets hijacked by the very people that need it to go away.
Yes.
So their white supremacy and privilege can live another day.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that gets into a whole kettle of cats, a whole nother kettle of cats, because, who is what happened to the real artistic critic who is going to talk about the nature of what you did. Now, it's not going to be for everybody.
Right.
You don't have but why do you have such an agenda where you can get it shut down so nobody else is going to look at it?
Right.
Say, kill it before it grows.
Right.
There is an attitude to catch it at the root before it grows and kill it. Why? Because you guys know no one willingly gives up privilege.
Right.
And privilege
Right.
isn't bipartisan. You know, we like to just say the right, but the reality is there are a lot of people that benefit that aren't, you know, far right, evangelical, whatever you want to call them. You know, it's like if we're really wanting to have a conversation, and that's what the film tries to do, tries to force the conversation, because we play around the conversation and use it as a buzzword to kind of pretend to ourselves that we're knee deep and we've rolled up our sleeves. We have not.
No,
We just
we have-
haven't. We talk
have
about a
not.
conversation that just does not happen. A police showing up to a barbecue and cooking for some kids at a park with the cameras there is not the conversation.
That's right.
That's right, that's
My
right.
kid-
No,
And you guys, we're gonna have to bring this to a close quickly, but
That's
I
the
do wanna,
spin.
I see, oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Keith, you wanna
That's-
say something?
Just saying, it goes back to former administrations that when they had the World Conference on Racism and America didn't attend.
2001.
Well,
That's
Because-
right, that's
that's
right.
very telling.
And
If
then
you
we
don't-
have,
you don't participate in the conversation, there can be no change.
that's right. And Dr., I'm sorry, I don't want to say Dr. Perry Irmer, we see
Yes.
Perry on the screen. I want to say who she is. Perry is the CEO of the DuSable Museum of African American History in Chicago. And Perry, was there something that you wanted to add before we start to close it up?
Yes, I would. And the fact that we were doing this Martin Luther King Day webcast with our education team on Monday and visiting these policy issues that are so pertinent and so ripe and so aligned. You know, this really is a karmic, a spiritual alignment of this message that
Yes.
we see on the TV, have seen since last Wednesday. What the image is the truth, right?
That's
we
right.
know how Black and brown and Muslim people would have been treated on those state capitol steps. There would have been a river of blood. Okay. And so when we look at things that Black people must do, you can't separate yourself from politics if you're Black in America.
That's
Right? And you can't separate yourself from policy and being active on the policy side. So when you look at the action items, like Nate, you were saying we want to act now. How do we act? We degrade or we eliminate qualified immunity, right? We make these officers accountable. They're licensed to kill, yet they have no requirement for personal liability insurance, right? And the taxpayers who pay their salaries also pay the settlements from when they shoot us to death, right?
Wow.
And so it's the taxpayers who need to stand up. It's the people who need to understand through the awareness of projects like what you're doing, work like we're doing at the DuSable, with films like Sean's film, Chicago 1919, which is being made. That truth has to come out, that awareness has to be there. And I would dare say that there needs to be a mandatory screening of your film and films like it, just like we, for a time, were educating young police cadets on Black history at the DuSable Museum, right? So what is the cure to the racism and the intolerance and the bigotry is truth, and it's wisdom and education. And that is the same education and the same facts that have deliberately been distorted and withheld from people who then in turn are sent after us, not to protect and serve, but to control, intimidate, and undermine, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
so these conversations are all of the same cloth. The policy activity, the political action and policy conversations that we must have, and we must have them with our own lawmakers, right? With our Black legislators, right? With our Black leaders, right? It cannot just be in the film industry. It cannot just be through museums or through a classroom. We've elected our representatives, right, to look out for us, just like those folks in the Capitol were looking out for their own, right?
Thank you for
And
that,
so when,
Perry.
and so
I'm
when-
sorry to cut you off, Perry, but we have to close it up.
Thank
I know,
you.
I know. This is it's such a short time, and I'm so sorry that it's so brief. I wish it was much longer. I just want to
Thank you.
say, you know, to our audience, you can all make a change.